work with.
Always, we will begin with a notation for the record that we do have a quorum. We're missing one of our members. Beyond that, we move to the minutes, approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Becky, did you ever figure out who the applicant was or who the speaker was?
I don't. I didn't get their name. I don't know who it is. So.
Okay, I don't recall either, but
No.
I'll take another look through my notes. I didn't get a chance to get to your email today.
That's okay.
I'll take another look through my notes and see if I have the name.
So should we move to table?
I think it's best so we have a complete record of what action we've taken, what's been
So
approved, rather
moved.
than. We have a motion to table the minutes till our next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, let's go on to our items of business. We have the request of Louis Dameron, actually two requests for a window replacement and gutter replacement at 230 East Sharon. Is Mr. Dameron available? David, do you see Mr. Dameron?
I do not. Spencer, as far as I know, either called or left a message with him on Friday, so
Okay.
he was aware of the meeting.
All right, well, let's put those two requests to the bottom of our agenda, such as it is. Let's move on then to the next request for new business. That's the Princeton City Schools for a conditional use application at 25 West Sharon Avenue. Is there someone from Princeton that wishes to address?
Jeff McDaniel.
All right. If you would, I don't know how much of a presentation you have. I don't recall ever seeing you here before, but we're usually kick it off with the applicant. Tell us what you want to do, and we take it from there.
Okay, appreciate it, Tom. Yeah, my name's Jeff McDaniel. I'm the Safety and Security Director at Princeton City Schools. We've had a long-standing relationship with another medical facility partner, and they provided athletic trainers to our student athletes. And throughout the district, Mercy Health did that for a number of years. We are now switching over to NovaCare. As part of that arrangement with NovaCare, we're hoping to get a conditional use for the property at 25 West Sharon that will allow 3 employees at NovaCare throughout the day to see approximately up to 4 patients an hour throughout the day. This would be approximately 8:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Currently, we have 13 staff members that are assigned to 25 West. Of those 13, 9 travel through the district. So usually there's only 4 people in that building from 8 a.m. to 4 o'clock on school days. As part of this proposal and what we're looking to do, we're going to relocate at least 2 of those 4 full-time employees elsewhere in the district. So the 9 that have an office space there, that travel around, they have varying times when they're in the building. The 4 that would be consistent is going to be pared down to 2. But in place of those 2, we'd have 3 NovaCare employees in there during their normal business hours seeing patients. That is the conditional request. Bill, Alan, you want to talk a little bit? Alan's from NovaCare. I'll let him speak here for a little bit.
Yes, what we've asked of Princeton Schools is that we lease back
Can
space.
you speak up, sir?
Oh, sorry. What we've asked of Princeton Schools is that we have the ability to lease space and open a physical therapy clinic within said space to treat not only athletes that may become injured during the course of season, but also the general population within the Glendale or surrounding areas. The space itself would serve as again, outpatient physical therapy. Again, staff-wise, we would be looking at a physical therapist, possibly a physical therapy assistant, and a front desk staff. Again, over the course of a given hour or given day, there could be up to 4 patients treating at any one given point in time. So therefore, the volume is not great during any given period of time. It's basically spread out throughout the course of the day as far as patients that would be attending physical therapy.
All right. And Alan, what was your last name for the record?
My last name is Husarchik, and that's pronounced Husarchik.
Did you get that, Becky?
Yep, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Any questions for Alan?
Well, I have
Or
a
from Mr.
general
McDaniel.
question. Is any signage being requested for this?
I would think, we haven't discussed the signage, but I would think there would be clarification as to exactly where they would enter. Because there's 2 entrances there. One is a handicap entrance that's already on the south side of the property there. On the east-facing property, there's an entrance that both would probably require signage, but I think the signage consistent would be with what was on the wall as opposed to anything and potentially one at the end of the driveway there where we already have signs.
And so you'd come back for the signage,
Correct.
yeah.
So at maximum, you would have, during an 8-hour day, you'd have 32 people coming through. But no
Yeah,
more.
so I think, that is if, obviously they have a number of facilities, and I can't really speak for NovaCare, but to open a facility like this, it's a pretty specialized niche of what it is that they're doing. They'd be taking from other facilities, and to think that they would have 100% occupancy right away is kind of hard to fathom, but again, there is that potential, so
Yeah.
yes.
I don't see any reason not to approve it.
So the,
Who owns, David, who owns the parking lot there?
Princeton owns
Princeton
that
owns the
lot.
parking lot, so it's their parking lot.
Correct.
Yeah, they've been nice enough to open it to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in essence, Princeton will be the landlord for a small business located in that building.
The Princeton, they'll, as shown in the diagram, approximately 1,500 square feet
Right.
will be leased to NovaCare.
I believe in the conditional use we just looked at, there is talk about, what is the one we looked at? 13. Use of specialized equipment for home occupations of physical and
Physicians.
physicians and dentists. So I think it's an appropriate use of the space, just like leasing space to anybody else in the residential district for this conditional use. And knowing about physical therapy, I know the people that come and go in that quantity, that's not that big of a space, so I would be in favor of the application.
I just want to mention that our village administrator wrote an excellent report on this.
Thank you, Beth.
Yes, and I agree with every word, so, and also with you, Mr. Kerr, so. Are you making a motion?
Well, let's continue our discussion. It is a public hearing. Well, let me hear from anybody in the audience. Anybody in the audience wish to address this application?
I had a question for the Princeton School Board, I guess, is, in essence, since now you're going to be leasing a portion of that, would Princeton lose their tax exemption, property tax exemption for 1,500 square feet? Since you're,
I'm not an attorney,
Yes.
so I don't know how that would
It's
apply.
under a certain
I'm
percentage.
sure
So, yes.
I don't think
the
so.
lease agreement would have an attorney overseeing
That
it,
would-
so
And
there's that potential.
largely that would be
Well, we
between
get
Princeton and
rent from-
the Hamilton County Auditor's Office.
Somebody needs to tell the owner.
That enforcement is concerned.
I'm
It's-
kind of interested in the potential revenue for the city, so, for the village.
I understand.
Thanks,
Sounds
Mike.
like a follow-up.
David, I had a question on how you slotted this into the conditional use as listed in our zoning code. And I'll read it for the people who don't have the benefit of the code in front of it.
Yep.
It says, the conditional use in this zone, the A zone, includes any public building,
Mhm.
which this is, erected or used by any department of the village and so forth, school district, so on and so forth. So, to my way of thinking, this is a public building that's obviously erected and used by the school, but this particular use is not a school use. It's not a department of the school, it's a private use. I'm not convinced that it's a permitted conditional use.
So the actual application is being, from my perspective, is being presented as a conditional use under 154.21B4 for a medical facility.
Say that again, 154.21
B4.
B.
It says, I believe, hospitals and other medical facilities or similar language.
Okay. Is that in the report? I might have missed that. Let me just-
So it talks about both conditional uses in the report. It talks about the current permitted, or I'd say allowed conditional use, which is the all-encompassing language about a public building for public school purposes. Now, theoretically, it could qualify for that because that doesn't limit it to for-profit, non-profit. There are no limitations on that use. It's simply if the school district wants to use the building for it, they can. So based on that kind of reading of the zoning code, really this conditional use hearing is unnecessary in a sense. But to add the distinction of a medical facility, in my opinion, is necessary to assist in restricting the amount of the building that can be used for that purpose to 1,500 square feet or thereabouts. Because you're limiting the portion of that building that can be applied, that conditional use can be applied to meet a certain square footage. If you leave it to the current conditional use of any and everything for a public building, it could be the whole building could eventually become a medical facility, and it gets through because Princeton is doing it. Not to say that Princeton would, of course, but just to add that level of distinction to the approval.
So let me approach it from a different angle. If Princeton were to subcontract for meals,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing as this. They're subcontracting for only students for medical, correct?
Currently. Mhm.
Currently. They're subcontracting for meals.
Mhm.
It's a subcontractor that they're paying for that's a for-profit.
Meals, janitorial services,
Yeah.
transportation, I mean, any
think-
service that a third-party vendor exists for is eligible.
Yeah, okay.
Eligible under
Under
to
the-
be a conditional use?
Under the public building, or the public school building use, because their use is beneficial to the operation of the school district.
But to take his analogy one step further, if that same food contractor, which is serving the students in the various schools, wanted to open a coffee shop in this building to serve the public, they'd be able to do that under your analysis?
No, I would say, just as I've done with Princeton with this, I would require them to go through, if there is a conditional use that would even qualify, I don't believe so, then they would have to go through that conditional use process for that use outside of the benefit of the school district. So by using it for outside individuals, outside meaning not Princeton individuals, then they're no longer using it, in my opinion, to the benefit of the school district or for the purposes of the school district. They're using it for the purposes of those outside of the school district.
And that's why you're doing it in this
That's
way?
why we're doing it as a medical
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah,
And
So
I
restricting
agree-
the space and that
Right.
logic.
And I agree with what you said just now about the hospital, or not, excuse me, the food use not being permitted. I didn't get out of your report the distinction of the hospital or institutional use, the subsection 4 being the conditional use that's being requested, as opposed to 3, which is the school.
The school use.
School use and anything that's, building that's used by the school.
Well, and as I said, I mean, B3 offers a lot of flexibility as far as use is concerned, but the purposes of running it through a B4 use is to restrict the square footage to a specific area to keep the entire building from losing that public school
All right.
building.
I didn't get that subtlety out
Okay.
of your report, and that's probably on me. I was focusing on 3, which says conditional use is for school use only, but this is semi-school use, but it expands beyond it to a private use, which I had a problem with.
which links to the hospitals.
But yeah, if you're slotting into the hospital or institutions, that's a different animal. Further discussion, members of the commission?
One last question. Would this conditional use be non-transferable should they move out? Will it cease to exist if this vendor leaves that space? Or will it be,
That's a good question for an
because
attorney.
it's for their business, not for Princeton?
Yeah, I would say that if it's restricted to Princeton, if the recommendation to council, and council's ultimate action on this is restricted to Princeton, then yes.
Yeah.
But
Well, who's the
No.
applicant? David?
Princeton is.
Princeton.
Yes.
So then.
Oh, they are?
So the conditional
Oh.
use would technically apply to the property,
Right.
to a certain square footage of the property. So a new,
Even if it's not a school property anymore, it would still apply.
correct,
That
it
property.
would still apply,
Unless we put something in the motion.
unless more,
Specific,
controlling language
yeah.
was put
See,
in.
I thought it
Well,
was.
if however Princeton were to sell the property, I'm not sure it would convey the conditional use at that point.
But maybe they could.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm genuinely not sure of the answer to that question, but
I thought the conditional use was going to be associated with the business being
Yeah.
allowed to go in there, not Princeton School. Is that an option for us to
I don't see why it wouldn't be. I don't know for sure. I don't want to try to answer that question and be incorrect, but I don't.
Because
see
Princeton isn't the one running the business that they're
Correct.
asking to run.
Yeah.
It should be associated with the business, in my thoughts.
Well,
Is that something for the lawyers to look at?
But,
Because
Yeah,
it's
but-
conditional, because it's hospital related,
It's the business.
Yeah.
medical
Correct,
yeah.
It's the
related.
use.
So if they move out and another business moved in that's not medical related, would that be okay?
No, because the after a certain amount of time, the conditional use, the suspension of that use would render it invalid.
Okay, and that takes care
So
of
there's a
it.
certain amount of time that if it lapsed,
Mhm.
then it wouldn't be used.
but what if the
No.
school system decided to hire somebody else than NovaCare when their contract ran out?
That should be okay.
They would have 1,500 square feet in which to work,
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's,
And it would have to
or
be-
whatever the
Would
final
have to be
approval is.
medical related.
Yeah,
yeah.
and it'd have to meet that use.
Mhm.
And that goes to one of the conditions that you recommended in your report, David.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be limited to 1,550 square feet as indicated on this plan.
Which is intrinsic through the conditional use approval process. You know, if it's a conditional use, it generally applies to the entire property, but since this application is voluntarily restricting the amount of space, just cementing it as a condition is,
And we should have that in the motion probably, right? Yeah.
that would and then ultimately appear in front of council as well.
Mhm.
And then you had a second recommendation about minimum of 2 employees, school employees,
Mm-hmm.
would be relocated. Again, that's based on their representations tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think about a condition of limiting NovaCare or the conditional use to having 3 employees?
Or I think they want 4.
I heard 3.
3 employees and 4 patients
Oh.
per hour.
Yeah.
No, there was no restriction that was thought about on NovaCare. I mean, with that 1,500 square foot limitation, I don't know how many employees NovaCare wants to put in that 1,500 square feet, but there would be a limit to that, just
Sort of self-limiting.
feasibly, yeah.
Well, David and I have discussed this a bit, and I am a lawyer, but I was trained as a lawyer, but I'm not acting as a lawyer at this point, simply commenting or making an observation here, is that we've had 2 separate reasons put forth regarding why this application could be granted. Number one, because it's an extension of Princeton School, it's providing a service to Princeton School, and so to that extent, it's just part of the school, the work for the school. You don't need a conditional use for that. On the other hand, it is also a conditional use because it's a medical type facility. And as a medical type facility, it is a conditional use could be approved here. So I think in making its decision, the commission could decide either A, we like both reasons, and either one of them will do, so they both apply, or pick one or the other and say, well, this is why we're approving it, and that would affect the future use and ability to have others come in and use the property.
Don, on that point, I disagree with the first reason, the reason that it's an extension of the school use. I mean, if it was only seeing students there, I would agree. But when they expanded to see private patients who are not affiliated with the school, then I think it takes away that reason altogether and slots it arguably in that hospital number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So as the basis, if that's going to be our recommendation, I think that we would only use the one.
Right.
And then whatever conditions the commission deems appropriate. You know, we've got 2 in front of us. I heard a third one talk about as far as the sign. And a 4th one even about being limited to either NovaCare or to the school or to the space. It seems like we're at that place where we're looking for a motion.
Going to have to be composed, I think. There's going to be parts to it. So I'll give a stab at it, that we approve it, conditional upon the space being no larger than what was requested, 1,500 square feet?
1550.
It says 1,500 on there.
The application, somewhere it says
Yeah, on the
1550.
lease agreement, it says 1,550 on that.
Okay.
That
Okay.
would probably.
1,550 is fine then.
So 1550.
Yeah, and that'd be designated as medical, for medical purposes only.
Under subsection 4 of our code?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then be limited to 3 employees, and that 2 employees from Princeton will be leaving the space. I guess we need to put that in, I don't know. And any request for signage will, this doesn't have to be in there either, but any request for signage will be a separate request. They
Yeah.
can't just throw that in there, because
Yeah.
we need to see the signage.
We do. I mean, it's
Yeah,
all
this does
historic
not
district.
include any signage. So
Yeah, does
that
not
would come
include
separately.
signage, yeah.
that would come separately.
Anything else we need to cover in that?
It seems to cover the bases unless others feel a need to supplement that. May I ask the applicant if that's clear and if that's acceptable, the language that you heard?
Yes, Tom, that sounds acceptable. I did want to say that I don't, NovaCare, the biggest thing for Princeton and what got this going in the first place was the ability to have athletic trainers for the kids. So that and the sports teams, that was a big must for us. So that's how we got going. But I mean, I can't speak for what the district would want to do down the road, but obviously if NovaCare does not get the exposure there that they were hoping for, and they don't get the patients there they're looking for, they might not decide a year from now that this is worthy of them continuing on. And at that point, it is no longer a medical facility in the eyes of Princeton. That I don't see them sliding the next person in trying to do the same thing. I think this was a one-off from what they had with Mercy Health, moving to a new one, trying to find a partner that they could work to get the athletic trainers, because once the sports season start rolling around, there's athletic trainers there throughout the day, throughout the evening, pretty much Monday through Friday. Anytime they have a sporting event, so every athletic event is at least one trainer there. So it's a big trade-off for Princeton. That's kind of how it came to be. But any changes in it, I don't see them trying to slide somebody in, and obviously I wouldn't propose that. I mean, that's not the way you do business.
Well, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know what's going to happen in
Right,
5 years.
I
10
agree,
years.
I agree.
But this is the model. Beacon does the same thing. Wellington did the same thing. They all provide trainers at their cost as a part of it to be able to try to suck in people for.
That's how Beacon got their start, really.
Right, to be able to suck in customers for 1, physical therapy, and 2, for other medical needs. So, got it.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
All right. We have a motion. Does anybody care to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Members of the commission, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That's by way of recommendation. I should make clear, this is not our final vote. It's a recommendation to council. David, is this on council agenda tonight?
It is
or-
not, unlike swimming pools, which are pretty cut and dry. This was not on the council agenda for this evening, but it will appear on the August agenda. And also, too, we'll confirm the wording of the, I think the wording of the motion is clear, but the resolution approving that conditional use with those 2 conditions will appear on the
You
council
can clean
agenda.
that up as much as you want, in my opinion. I just sort of threw it out.
No, it makes sense. Yeah,
Okay.
very clear.
Becky got it all down.
Yeah, I'll call Becky.
Tom, quick question.
Yeah.
Why is the commission being so prescriptive on the number of employees?
I don't know.
Well, I think it's because they presented their application that way, and that's the way they made us feel comfortable. So, and they agreed to that as a condition, so,
I wasn't that keen on
in that regard, we,
making them.
speaking of the full commission, if I can, And of course, it's just a recommendation. The council can take or leave those conditions, approve or deny it with different conditions.
Yeah, just seems a little prescriptive, like, it needs to be white or purple or.
Yeah,
whatever.
I wasn't that keen on that part myself. You could tell when I was doing the motion that
Just a thought.
restricting the 2 people didn't really matter to me, but.
Well, it also
Is
can
it-
potentially impact the amount of parking
It's a
that's
traffic
required.
Yeah, but they own all that parking.
I know, but,
They're nice enough to let us
I
use
know,
it.
but it is,
All right, thanks, Mike.
depends
Thanks,
on the
Mike.
number of employees that you have.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. You're happy to leave if you want or stay.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
You don't pay, I'll give you-
Okay.
So we'll give you guys, I'll give you a call when it's
Okay.
ready to go.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Let's-
Good night.
Good night. Let's go back to the top of our agenda, the request of Louis Dameron at 230 East Sharon. Mr. Dameron?
Yes, sir.
All right, we've got 2 applications for you. It seems to make sense if we just take them together while you're here.
All righty.
Window replacement and gutter replacement. I don't know that you've ever been before, so we're happy to hear as much or as little as you've got to say, and then we'll take it from there.
The building
No,
is
I just
240.
was trying to better the property. I had some windows that were clouding up and getting moisture in between them and going bad or whatever, so that's what I did with the windows. And then I went with Champion window. I bought the best window that they had or whatever. And then the gutters are, there's no box gutter. All my box gutters are really good, but the regular standard gutters up top or whatever are sagging down, and I'm getting some birds up into my attic right now, so that's why I want to replace all those.
Okay. I didn't see any pictures or images in the application. David, do you have any that you
I
can
do
drop on?
not. No, I don't.
I mean, from what he's describing, it sounds, at least on, as far as the gutters go, just mere routine maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even the windows were basically routine maintenance. The last time I did them was 1990. So after 30-something years, but
Yeah.
the stuff I give David or whatever had pictures of the windows in there. All they are is the best windows that Champion makes, so.
What were the windows that were in there? Were they wood windows or vinyl
No,
windows?
no, they were vinyl.
They were vinyl
They were
too?
from Vinyl Max on Lipperman
So you're
Road,
just,
which is a
replacing
cheaper.
like with like,
Yeah,
okay.
I
Okay.
made them exactly, it looks identical,
Okay.
so.
Are they in, the windows and the gutters, are they already in?
No, the windows I did.
You,
I didn't even know I even had to come in front of the board because, you know, I've been out of Glendale for, I don't know, since '83. We moved up the street, so.
Mhm.
But no, even in 1990, I didn't have to do it, but I'd say this came after that. But no,
Yeah.
honestly, the windows are in, and I mean, they look beautiful.
Now, just to clarify though, the previous windows were completely vinyl?
Yeah, they were identical.
Okay.
They were identical, but a cheaper window. They were made by Vinyl Max, which is a company that's gone now. So
Uh-huh.
then I went with a company that's been there forever, which is Champion. So, like I said, I bought the very best window they had. So,
Are you ready for a motion?
well, one question about the windows, you say they're the exact same vinyl, but also the dividers
It's
or
1/1.
no dividers?
They're 1/1. They used to be 1/1. I've got a picture,
Yeah.
old picture
yeah,
here.
they're identical,
Okay.
but you know, it's got a better UV rating in the glass and stuff like that. But they were fogging up on me, and
That's the
the
old
screens were all going bad. So I just figured I'd better the property, and I honestly
That's
they
from
are in
Google
the
Maps.
gutters.
They're vinyl
That's-
if they're choices are vinyl.
Yeah, that's-
I
yeah.
apologize.
Oh
This
yeah,
is-
they were
this-
vinyl for
This is
vinyl.
no, yeah. For my purposes, if vinyl windows being replaced by vinyl windows is considered a like and same replacement, doesn't require planning commission
Right.
Right.
review. Now, I don't know about the gutter replacement if planning commission wants to render a decision on that.
Is the gutters, is that replacing the same?
Are they
thing?
changing in dimension or
No,
material?
they're
Okay.
exactly
So-
what they are. They're
Then-
just a
I'm
I'm not
standard
even
white
sure it has to
gutter.
come before us.
But David, shouldn't a building permit have been?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
we'll,
why I
we'll,
mean-
we'll handle that on our building side.
Okay, yeah,
so-
that's why
so
I'm
the
here. I
purposes
just
of coming to
had
the planning-
have one.
So officially, we don't even need to.
No.
approve.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So no decision.
Other than to chastise Mr. Damon for not doing it the right way.
I know it. I didn't know. That's
You
why I
have to
told
take
David.
all
I
the
said,
windows
honestly,
out
if I
now
knew,
and put
I'd
it
already
back
done it.
I want to give Mr. Dameron a scare. How's that sound?
It did. It worked. It worked.
Well, that was easy.
Okay.
No decision. No decision needed.
Yeah, no
I-
decision
that's
needed.
The
We
way you
can
want
move
to
on.
phrase it, no decision.
Thank you for joining us. I
Thank you, guys.
apologize for
Thank
interrupting
you.
your evening. Have a good day.
Well, that's the end of our action items. We do have, David, an introduction for a public hearing on the zoning code amendments. I'll let you take it from there. 'Cause
Sure.
You know more than I do about these.
So back at the May meeting, there was an application for some fencing that could be described as temporary, and then there was also an application for the removal of a chimney on an accessory building at the Lyceum property. Prompted some conversation about potential zoning code amendments towards each of those sections. Regarding the first one for temporary fencing, I did a Center for Local Government survey of temporary fencing codes in other municipalities. Got 2 responses that actually have anything in their code. Both apply to construction fencing for work sites rather than a temporary garden fence or something similar to what was approved. So in my just understanding what was received, as well as what was discussed at the last meeting, I really don't see an opportunity unless we want to write something from scratch to really pursue that or make any changes. Rather, just future fencing applications continue to come before the Planning Commission if they're historic, as they typically do. And then regarding the chimney requirements, there was some discussion about changes to the Glendale codified ordinances about requiring chimneys on all new buildings. I don't particularly recall the discussion, Randy. I think not to call you out, but
That's all right. No, I'm the one
I'm
that did it.
going to hand that off.
I take responsibility. What I said is, do we have any code regarding the removal of chimneys? And the answer was no.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, let's move that we allow it to be removed since it's not a real chimney to begin with.
Just one comment on that, the removal, unless it's an architectural element of the building, like the, what's the St. Gabe's house, the rectory.
Mhm.
We refused to allow them to remove those chimneys once they blocked up the fireplaces because it was deemed a critical,
I agree with that.
what do you call it? An
Architectural feature.
architectural feature of that building, and we told them no. So, I
But
think-
this is on accessory structures, not on main buildings. Now, maybe we ought to have a code on main buildings or
We
say
do-
something.
We don't require chimneys on accessory structures. I thought we just
we
required.
do.
It says all
Yes,
new
we
buildings.
Right,
I
we
thought
do.
cupolas.
As an option.
Or it can be
Or
a
cupolas.
cupola.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a compromise.
Because I remember
originally.
Sam Allen's big thing was
Yeah.
where the cupolas
I
on
mean,
accessory buildings.
Had to be over.
But I didn't
6 square foot.
recall
It had to be
that.
over. It was 900 square feet, which is a 30 by 32 car garage,
Um,
and it could be a cupola or a chimney. And by the way, we missed this on the Eilers giant garage, which is way over 300 square feet. They have no chimney or cupola on that
No
building.
I can't see why you'd need a chimney on unless you had a fireplace in an accessory.
Why
just-
would
it
you
was a
have
hang-up.
one?
In an accessory
Doesn't make any
structure.
sense.
That
No,
doesn't make any
it doesn't
sense.
make any
So,
sense.
as far as an
So,
accessory structure,
as
but the cupola question's another.
to offer
Aesthetic.
to offer a suggestion, perhaps rephrasing the amendment to read something to the effect of new main dwellings or main buildings on lots. Our code uses the phrase main building to describe homes very frequently, to require chimneys, but then exempting accessory structures and perhaps adding a square foot limitation for a cupola that could be applied to accessory buildings if needed.
But isn't it an architectural appropriateness thing that we should
That
have
also
some
could
leeway
be part of it too.
to decide if it needs one or
cupola
doesn't
wouldn't even be appropriate on some.
on some
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
ones?
Yeah.
Like on the Eilers building where it's a carriage house, it's absolutely, a cupola is absolutely not appropriate because they're gonna finish the second floor. And in today's world, who's gonna put a chimney up even if it's, and for us to make people put fake chimneys up,
Yeah.
like we
Well-
did the Lyceum, in my opinion, is crazy.
We've done it.
Yeah.
I know we have.
I agree,
Brothers
but
Pond.
this is in the
Brothers
code,
Pond.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. So we have to
So
take it
we
out.
do have to change it. If
David, can you take a stab at revising that subsection 4?
can you help me with what section you're on,
It's,
or what the citation is?
yeah, 154.46 AB.
And does this only apply to the historic
It
district?
does.
Yeah,
'Cause it-
subsection D, number 4.
46.
This is kind of a
D4.
database slicing and dicing when you did your audit many, many, many years ago. What percentage of homes in the historic district have chimneys?
I don't know.
Gotta-
That
I gotta
isn't
imagine
something
it's over
that I,
90-something.
that I
Right, I know.
Yeah.
compiled.
But just.
But it
off-
was a,
It's
it
gotta be
was
way
a,
up there.
It's gotta
it
be
was
over
something
90-something.
that was important to Sam Allen. if I
Yeah, that's what it
recall,
was.
Because he thought historically, because homes were heated with
Exactly.
fireplaces or
Exactly.
whatever,
So were the
you would
care
have a
houses.
chimney.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
it
you get
doesn't
those
make
horses warm.
sense for a new structure that's built now.
No.
So-
How many new structures?
No,
It
there's
could-
new accessory
are being
structures.
dovetailed
Even a new
into-
house.
I say new homes because there are homes on Matthews Court that
Right.
do not have a reason for a chimney, but they're
Right.
required to have a chimney. We
Right.
have
Yeah.
chimneys on Matthews Court with
Right.
no reason for them.
Right, except
Yeah,
the aesthetics
I-
of the village.
It never made sense to me. But I didn't say that out of respect for Mr. Allen.
So my stab at revising it is just striking it completely, I suppose. But we could add the requirement that, or alter the language. It reads currently, new buildings other than an accessory building of less than 500 square feet shall include one or more chimneys, whether operational or ornamental, except garages which may include cupolas, unless 1/3 or more of the buildings on adjacent lots do not contain chimneys.
Cupolas.
That sounds good.
But that-
I would
That's
just
the current
delete it.
language.
I would delete it from the code.
Altogether?
Yes.
So not required for homes, new homes even?
Well, we have them
Correct.
without, we have them.
Yeah.
They're spending money to build these things that look like a chimney,
Right.
and they're leaking.
Well, they didn't
Oh,
have to do it
better.
that way. They could have put it on top of what was, on top of a finished roof, and then it wouldn't be
Could
leaking.
build them better.
Wouldn't new chimneys be appropriate for certain styles of homes? New homes even, but just of a certain style?
Mhm.
Yes.
And-
See, here's what's coming up. Say the Landmark Church development comes into us, and are we gonna require them to have chimneys?
No, and right now, the way the code is written, it's required.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's not in the historic district. What we're reading is from the historic district.
But it's,
not-
Correct.
or,
but it's,
But in unit
it's still a
developments.
development that's
unit
think it is.
developments and
subject
all
to
that.
our rules, right?
This
It's a different
this applies
section,
to new buildings in historic
In the
districts.
historic.
So, for instance,
Okay.
the new house on Coral that was built or applied for, 6 months ago, whatever it was required to install fake chimneys.
You know, in your guidelines where you have the little drawing of house,
Mhm.
and house in the middle, appropriate or inappropriate, you know, could we word it somehow, would it be acceptable that where you're plugging a new house in, if it's the houses,
That's what he basically said when he.
Yeah.
I missed
read
that.
What if
It's
there's
part of the code
two
now.
or more contiguous buildings that have
meaning the
them?
houses next to it?
He said 1/3 of the
1/3.
adjacent homes.
That's still,
Which is, it's fun to calculate and fun to do the math on.
We don't wanna
Yeah,
make
but-
it too
but-
mathy.
Yeah.
yeah, but why are we requiring something that's fake in order to make something look more authentic? I mean, that is
That it would-
Well, we
inconsistent.
That it would
acquire
fit in.
simulated divided light. They're fake.
Yeah, and
True,
it would
but-
fit into the aesthetic of the village. I mean, if you drive around,
Well,
There's
but
chimneys
modest
everywhere.
houses could have had stoves with just a stovepipe.
yeah, but drive around and look.
So,
I think this needs further
David, the
consideration.
houses on Carruthers Pond
Mhm.
didn't have to have chimneys.
According to this section of the code, no.
But they do, they have,
No, I don't know whether that was a
Yeah.
condition of their approval
I
or
think
not.
I think we
I'd
made
have to
them
go
do it.
back and review
I'm
that.
pretty sure we made them do it.
In the development.
No, it could be,
in the
it could be
development.
added perhaps as an amendment to the guidelines rather than strike it from the actual code and add it as an amendment to the guidelines. So just as there are
She's
other,
shaking yes, and I'm shaking.
just as there are other kind of say strong recommendations towards certain design structure, certain design
I like
elements.
what you read to us about depending on the adjacent homes and all that kind of stuff. I thought that made a lot of sense.
That's the
already in there.
existing code. So
Oh,
There we go. There
Well,
we
but,
go.
but it says over 500 feet for accessory buildings. I would take that out for sure.
Yeah, I don't think you need a chimney on an accessory building.
Yes.
I mean, we're not gonna disallow
even
one
a
if
I don't
somebody
think
puts,
so either.
Well,
puts a
cupola
fireplace in.
either.
Cupolas are another, yeah.
They're a
When that
maintenance
came through,
nightmare.
so
I mean,
it-
500 feet is like a shed.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
garage or anything.
yeah, I agree.
So-
It
so-
should not be in the accessory building.
my recommendation is to amend this section to read either something to the effect, and I'll come back to the next meeting with language for it, new main buildings or new dwellings on, and then strike other than accessory buildings of less than 500 square feet. So it would read, new dwellings shall include one or more chimneys, whether operational or ornamental, except garages, which may include cupolas instead of chimneys, unless 1/3. So that at the very least, the requirement for a chimney is limited to residential buildings, homes, as opposed to.
I don't think you need that garage part. I think you can cut that off too,
Yeah.
can't you?
Because that's an accessory structure.
Yeah.
It's true.
So cut that off.
You can go under the accessory.
So new dwellings shall include one or more chimneys, whether operational or ornamental, unless 1/3 or more of the buildings on adjacent lots. Now,
And then are you wanting to get rid of the cupola requirement on accessory structures? But if somebody wants one, they can
Right.
submit
Of
it
course
on the
they
drawing.
can.
Okay.
Of
Right,
course they can.
cupolas on
I could go along with
garages
that.
are good for ventilation.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
really help.
I think we dismissed the temporary fence thing a little too quickly. I could see people abusing the heck out of that. Just say, well, it's temporary. You know, just they could any lot in Glendale they could put up a fence and say it's a temporary fence.
Fence is a fence. I mean,
It
what
still
makes-
would go through the process of getting approval and a permit if it was in the historic district. I mean, a certificate of appropriateness.
You're talking about
Temporary would.
Yes. I mean, if it's temporary in the sense that it's used for construction purposes.
But we don't have anything in our code that says any of that, right?
Correct. But we do have through our property maintenance code avenues to talk about safe work sites and those sorts of details that we could likely find some code that would work to enforce that, to restrict the use of those. Now, as far as using that in place of traditional, like installed permanent fencing is something, there's no language for it in the code, but from an enforcement standpoint, it would be very easy to look at someone and go, that's not going to function as a fence, or you'll have to go through the planning commission process and get a permit and do
But
what
under what grounds could we make them do that?
the fact that they're treating it as a fence. If it's meeting the functional requirements of a fence, it's containing a dog, or it's decorative, delineating their property line, then it's functioning
Just
as a traditional
imagining somebody
fence.
putting up that orange construction
That has
fence
to come here too.
around their property because they don't like their neighbor's
Delineation.
dog going on their
Sure.
property.
Visible fence.
And saying this is temporary, when they get rid of that dog, we're gonna take it down.
At that point, they would be required to get a permit and go through that process. Now, the building commissioner, I will not admit to know the building code back of my hand. There are certain requirements that fencing has to meet from a building code perspective that that kind of a fence wouldn't comply with if it's going to stand and function as a traditional fence. So, but then again, I've
Unless
never
they
had
say it's temporary.
I've never had a circumstance like that occur.
But we are running into the same problem here that we ran into with the temporary sign issue, where we couldn't figure out what a good definition of temporary was for a sign. And, by the same token, a fence is a fence is a fence, yet, in this case, I don't think we want to say no temporary fencing at all.
No.
All fencing has to meet our fencing standards. So one thing you could do is, and this just popped into my head, so it may not be a good idea at all, but is think of something as purpose-driven, of saying, well, a temporary fence is a fence erected for a temporary purpose, such as, construction. And if you said, or other similar temporary purpose, then that would give the administrator a certain amount of leeway to decide whether this is truly a temporary purpose or not.
That's the approach to it doesn't exist in the code, but that's the approach to enforcement. Now, if
Yeah.
this issue appears, which it hasn't, but if this issue appears, is if you're using fencing to restrict an area from access, you're performing construction work or something, then if you're using it to restrict access to an area, if that project isn't continuing, then at that point, the fencing is no longer temporary in the sense that it's going to go down when work's complete. Sorry. It becomes permanent, or spiritually permanent, I suppose, and then it requires a permit, which allows it to not comply with the building
But
code.
that's safety fencing you're talking about now, restricted
Correct.
safety fencing for
Correct,
construction.
yeah, a
I mean,
barrier.
That's a whole different animal.
That's a much different thing than, you know,
I
keeping
mean,
a dog.
Fencing, we can leave fencing the way it is, and if they want to call it temporary, and they want to tear it down after they've had it in for, you know, they still come before us as a fence.
Correct.
And however long they want to keep it there, whatever they consider temporary, that's their.
And I haven't checked.
I'm saying, I don't think we should come up and start specifying some temporary fencing code.
I'll
I think
admit,
it should just be
I-
fencing code.
I don't know that, I don't know specifically if it's in the guidelines, but I don't think orange plastic is an acceptable material for
No.
fencing. So,
No.
Right.
No.
you know, I think if you reach that point where it ceases to serve as a protective barrier for a project and becomes containing a dog or something like that,
Let's
then
not create a problem where there isn't one.
let's not create a solution for something that
Yeah.
doesn't have a problem.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems that one aspect of what makes a fence permanent is that it's anchored in the ground, right? That it can't be easily moved,
Rolled up.
right? And I'm thinking of the dog grooming business on Troy. They have a metal fence in the front yard, right? And that's an animal pen, right? That's movable.
Yeah.
It's not a permanent fence, right? But, you know, we have to think about that.
That's where this came from.
Yes.
Right.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
the wooden picket
Oh, okay, so
fence.
it's
Yeah.
not,
No, that wooden fence is just with metal rods
You
shoved in
just
so that
stick
they
it
can
in
lift
the
that.
ground.
metal.
So-
it's
Take
not,
care of
But
it.
as far
it's
as
not
I'm
anchored.
concerned, that
Right.
fence
Correct.
fence is-
But it was installed with the intention of marking out the property, or among other things. So it came before the planning commission. Planning commission approved it. She got a permit.
It's a fence.
So it went through the
Oh, it
process
did.
I'm describing.
Oh, fine.
So,
Yeah,
and that was under our
the
current
process worked.
our current unchanged
Yeah.
code. Yeah.
Right.
If I
wasn't
need
here
amendments,
then.
I'll come back to you and tell you I need an amendment.
There's certain things we have to trust you with, David.
Famous last words, Randy.
No, there are. And if we aren't willing to give you the right to make it, to have the judgments, then we're gonna spend way more time at these meetings.
Be doing his job.
Yeah.
All right, so no new fences, no new fence regulations, and you're going to take a stab at the chimney. You
I'll
won't
have-
practically have it done right now. as
Yeah, I'll
well.
have revised language at the
Can
August
you
meeting.
email it for review before the
Certainly.
meeting, like
Sir,
the week before?
All right. Well, that concludes our public hearing on fences and chimneys. Is there anything else that needs to come before the commission? Anyone in the audience wish to address the commission?
Just a quick one on fencing, since you're note on that. When Randy made a motion on the temporary fence, he indicated that it must be painted white because currently it's, natural. I think that kind of goes beyond the.
It has to be
guidelines.
painted, not white.
Is this email you sent me in May or whenever we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't.
Because we
Yeah.
have. picket
Yeah,
fences
I don't remember saying it had to be
Can't
white.
specify a color.
I went back through the video to make sure that I didn't hear that, but remember, I'm just in a peanut gallery, just picking up things.
My recollection, and I think I responded to your email in this regard, was that the applicant told us that she was going to paint it white.
White, correct.
And he just kind of regurgitated that as a
Yeah.
as
But we
a
have
comment
no,
and
we
not
have
a
no color
requirement.
requirements.
No.
I watched the video 3 times and she did not.
Okay, so I made a mistake.
No.
Thank you for pointing it out, Mr. Bowman. My wife does every day, so if you want to take her place.
No, it's just clarification of,
You're getting this all in the minutes,
does
aren't
it
you?
have to be painted?
No.
It's like, that was the only.
It does have to be painted.
It
but
was
It
wood.
doesn't have to be white.
Yes.
Sealed.
Sealed, it could be
It
sealed
has to be stained or painted.
or sealed.
I don't know, or can it just be sealed?
I don't
Because
know.
we have
I don't know
picket
what it-
fences that are natural and they're,
If it was plastic, you wouldn't have to seal it.
so, anyway.
All right. Anything
We're talking
else,
about wood
members of the
fences.
commission?
Well, I just have one quick question about the chimney ordinance. That is that going into our zoning code?
It would go into our zoning code.
So this needs to be a recommendation from the planning commission to start the process of amending our zoning code
Right.
to the
That's-
following effect.
That's what we're that's what we're
That's what it
starting.
says,
to-
Okay.
public hearing for
Correct.
zoning code amendments.
All right,
So we'll have revised language for final approval the August meeting for the planning commission, and then it'll go to council either in August or
So
in
unless we have some
September.
real lovers of chimneys, we should be fine.
okay.
Any other motions?
Yeah, public.
With that, I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn, was there a second?
Oh, second.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Everyone for it, I was mentioning